instead of just talking about Copilot, they really started talking about agents this year. And that I did say regret. I thought nobody noticed. Maturity model for Copilot agents. It's June 11th, 2025. We have the four OGs. Patrick and Carrie are off doing some good learning, so it's just the four of us today. And we're going to talk about maturity model for Copilot's agents, quote unquote. So we decided in some conversations that we've been having recently that you really can start thinking about Copilot as we talked about last time when we did the Microsoft 365 Community Conference recap. There seems to be sort of a shift in the marketing messages that are coming from Microsoft, and that instead of just talking about Copilot, they really started talking about agents this year. And that I did say regret. I thought nobody noticed. Damn it. But maybe that was an appropriate slip of the tongue. Anyway, we really realized that there could be a maturity model approach to thinking about agents. And so we wanted to try to go down that road and sort of suss that out and talk through it. So absolutely, if you disagree with how we're sort of thinking about this, certainly come off mute, whatever, chime in. So we're going to talk about a maturity model approach. We're going to talk about out-of-the-box third-party agents. Then we'll talk about SharePoint agents. Then we'll talk about Copilot Studio. I'll spend a few minutes, nothing more than that, on declarative and custom engine agents. And Carrie had the great idea to summarize things and do a takeaway at the end. So we're going to do that, which is new. All right. So, Mark, let's start with trying to take our maturity model and jam agents into it. And how do we think about that?
Yeah, so we as usual, or as we often do, we have this 100 to 500 maturity model stairway. And if you think about how your organization might approach Copilot or just AI in general, down at the 100 level, people in your organization might be using some of the ready-made stuff that's just there that Microsoft makes available, and I probably should have called it out here, they're using ChatGPT and Claude and whatever. They're out there wandering around the internet using whatever AI stuff they run across. But if we stick just to Microsoft 365, we'll talk a little bit about some of those ready-made agents. The next level up might be that some of your users start creating SharePoint agents for themselves. They start creating sort of basic agents to solve specific problems just for themselves. And I think that's the themselves thing. It's more solving point problems. At level 300, you start to think as an organization about providing, I love to use the as a service thing for lots of different conversations, but sort of agents as a service. Maybe it's IT making those agents available. Maybe it's finance. It doesn't matter who's making them available, but it's that you're starting to think more about making these agents and having them used across the organization or by people throughout the organization to accomplish specific tasks. Next level up, 400, might be agents embedded in key work processes. So I think we're seeing Microsoft actually follow this maturity ladder a little bit as well, in that the beginning when Copilot came out, it's like everybody should have Copilot, and a lot of people couldn't grok that. Grok, that's the name of something else. And now Microsoft is also focusing on agents that solve specific business problems as opposed to just sort of general AI. That's level 400. And then level 500 is really where you start to have an agentic, which is not a word, ecosystem where agents are calling other agents, and they're accomplishing work in sort of hives of agents that are getting stuff done for you. It's one way to think about it. You could also
call that workflow too, like workflow being done with agents And I think all that really means is you're bringing large language models to the party of your workflow.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on. So this is the only slide we're going to show that shows something without a Copilot license. If you go to office.com, which is the only way I can remember how to get to this page, and it redirects 3 times, and if you're lucky, all 3 work, and you end up at the thing, and you don't have to refresh the page. Editorial done. Okay, so if you land on the new office.com page, which is called Microsoft 365 Copilot, and you don't have a Copilot license, you still see agents. So there are some that are built by Microsoft, a couple, and there are a couple that are available from third parties. I did this in a couple of different, or actually like 6 different tenants, just to see if there were any variations here. Some of the more agents are different from tenant to tenant. I can't tell you why. But agents are already a part of your sort of ecosystem in your tenant, even if you don't know about them, even if you're not governing them, which is probably the key point here. You might want to be thinking about how to govern this stuff, even if you're not providing Copilot licenses to anyone. Next slide, please. If you do provide...
Yeah. I was going to say, I want to put one thing. So you say you checked that on many tenants. I checked that on a couple of my tenants, and I didn't have a Copilot license, but I had a button beneath my name that gave me the opportunity to buy a Copilot license to light up the work stuff.
Great.
Interesting. Well, the other thing I noticed is when I first landed on this page, after those 3 redirects, the agent section wasn't on the left side. And I waited for a while in a couple of the tenants, and it didn't show up until I refreshed the page. So there seems to be some, and I don't go to this page, so I think the first run experience is probably a little broken here.
Could be.
And that stuff isn't all showing up when it should. So next page is, okay, so say you do have Copilot licenses, then you start to see specific agents. Some of these are, actually all of these on this screenshot are out of the box things. They're agents that Microsoft provides for you. So even if your organization is not building any agents, you're not governing anything, it's just sort of that Wild West environment, people may start using these analyst and researcher and visual creator agents, or the scroll down on this would be, there's also a third-party agent section, and there are some there that are available for free and some that are available free to start, freemium, and then some that you have to pay for. So this agent stuff is going to be in front of your population, and so you need to be thinking about it.
Cool. All right. So Todd, let's segue to you for the SharePoint agents, which is sort of this custom or no code sort of starting point.
Yeah, so this is a new thing that came out here about a year or so ago, and we did a whole Ask Some Praxis about this. So if you're watching this recording, stop right now, go back to our YouTube channel and watch the Ask Some Praxis about this, because it's 30 minutes of goodness about this, whereas I only get a couple here. But basically, they've added their own kind of Copilot-y agents to SharePoint. Built right in, again, like Mark said before, you got to have a license for this before the UI and all that will light up. If you create any sites from here going forward, or within the last 6 months or so, you'll get an agent for the whole site just by virtue of building the site. It'll show up and you'll be able to see them. Anybody inside of the site that can create a file, because these are just files, they're .agent files. Anybody that can create a file in the site can create their own agents on top of that one. So this gives them the flexibility, like Mark talked about with the 200 stuff. If you want to solve a problem for yourself, this is an easy way to do it. You can find a document library that you're always going to and pouring through the documents and put an agent there and give yourself the ability to ask questions about the documents in there, things like that. They're fairly broad in that with SharePoint data, you can have up to 20 sources per agent. And so that can be a site. For our European friends, I'll start with my thumb. That can be a site, a library, a folder, or a file, and any combination of those that you want. So by default, it'll start wherever you're at. So if you're in a document library, it'll be the whole document library. If you're in a folder, it'll be that whole folder. If you're at the root of the site, it'll be that whole site. but then you can add up to 19 more, so you can move some stuff around. They can be in different sites if you want them to, which is pretty cool. And then these agents are also visible to you wherever you're at inside of SharePoint. So you don't have to worry about figuring out where the agent was created and going that way. They're easy to create. It's about 2 clicks to create one. It's about 5 clicks to customize it. And they're really easy to manage because they're just files. So if you want to delete an agent, you just delete a file. If you want to move an agent, you just move the file. If you want to approve it, it's all very simple, simple stuff.
Cool.
I don't know if anyone's going to touch on it later, but one of the first things that I would say to anybody is name your agent.
Name it well.
Don't give it that, documents agent. You're going to have 300 of these things in your tenant if you don't.
And they'll all show up in that drop down and they'll all look exactly the same. Yeah. So this, I wanted to show how easy this was. There's a couple of places highlighted in red there where you can create an agent. And as soon as you do it, the agent is created. You're done already. So at the bottom, I've got edit outlined because I'm a go in and tinker kind of guy. But right next to it is an open agent, and you just go in and you start playing. You start seeing what AI can do for you. So it's super easy to create these things. Next slide. So I hope I'm not stealing much of Derek's thunder, but this slide probably should be what's missing in the SharePoint agents as opposed to why to go to low code. But these are the questions as I've showed this to clients, and I did a couple talks about this at conferences. These are the questions that people ask about. The first one is, does this work with lists? It does not work with lists. It's only document libraries. You can't bring any non-SharePoint data into these. It's just where you're at in SharePoint. You can't do anything. You can't create things or modify things or anything like that. They can't be agentic. They can't be triggered or have flows or any of that kind of stuff. You can't really do much on analytics with them. The best you can do, since they are files, is you can go through your audit log to see when people create a .agent file, and that'll give you some idea where they're at, or you can do a search for them, and then you can find the agents that you have access to. And you can't publish them outside of M365. These things only work inside of SharePoint. So next slide. Yeah. Tara brings up a good point. So Tara, every time I've talked to somebody about this, the very first question is always, I've got a bunch of stuff in lists. This will be great. How do I use it with lists? You can't use it with lists. This is a slide that we stole from a Microsoft deck. And it really kind of breaks down where the different steps for the maturity model is. For these, it's just giving it some instructions. You do have the option of giving it like a system prompt and just grounding it in your SharePoint data, and that's really all that you have access to inside of these.
Yeah, we're going to come back to this slide quite a bit.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. It really helps you sort of visualize all the pieces of what an agent is, and then which pieces you can control based on where you're creating that agent from. So from the SharePoint agent perspective, as Todd just said, only that knowledge box with the instructions and grounding can be affected by it. Everything else is controlled by Microsoft based on the code that they already have in there. So I think that's super helpful from a visualization / understanding point of view. All right. Moving forward, Derek, you're going to take on Copilot Studio, which is more the low-code version.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was thinking about like the no-code, low-code piece, and like it's pretty easy when you look at like the Power Platform. There's a lot of JSON that goes on in the Power Platform, and to me that makes it, while it's not code, it's something that requires technical knowledge. I mean, essentially, Copilot Studio is a what you see is what you get development environment that lets users create conversational and non-conversational agents. It is similar to Power Platform in that you can like drag and drop bricks or blocks of actions around on the screen. It's very visual. It's a visual IDE for you to be able to get these things created. Mark sort of showed a few at the very beginning of some of the templates. You can use all of those pre-created things like the idea coach and the prompt writer. You can use all of those as templates to create your own custom business logic. And this logic can be both personal, productivity, like you could build it to reason over your emails every day, but it could also be something that is more enterprise level, more like broadly used across the organization. Now, there's two places where you can actually access Copilot Studio. So if you want to do next slide.
Yep.
That is the next slide, right? Oh, no.
Yep.
So we're going to go back to the architecture slide. Now, Copilot Studio agents are a little different. And what you'll see here is that the foundation model is using Copilot Studio, which under the hood is using Azure AI. And then the orchestrator is handled by Copilot Studio. So it's doing all the orchestration there. You can then surface the Copilot, the agent, in either Copilot, Teams, or other custom user experiences. So that's different than the SharePoint agents in that you've got a broader space where you can start to surface these things. And on the right-hand side, this is really the key differentiator between the SharePoint agents and Copilot Studio agents, is we get to control and update the instructions and the grounding. So we get to update the knowledge. We get to update the skills. What can it do with the data, or how can users interact with that data in that agent? And then also we can have triggers that fire automatically, so we can get that automatic sort of, if some inbox request comes in from Julie, always accept that that meeting invite, regardless of if I'm busy. Just accept. All right, next slide.
Yep. Just to make one statement, Shane did a great video on the fact that because in Copilot Studio you can use Power Platform connectors, this grounding piece actually could point to a SharePoint list. So you could use a connector and point at a SharePoint list and use the SharePoint list data then as the grounding knowledge in a Copilot Studio agent. So it's not probably what they intended you to do, but it is absolutely a way to get around the fact that you can't the Copilot LLM, Copilot orchestrator over their LLM doesn't ground automatically against SharePoint list data and metadata. So
yeah,
just
and on
wanted
top
to
of
point
that,
out.
you can take actions with SharePoint lists too. So you can
Yes.
create stuff
Right.
and you can do all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah. It's really very, very, very powerful platform, I think. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Next slide.
Yes. So there's really two places where you can create Copilot Studio agents. The first is that screen that Mark was showing us, that home screen, which used to be office.com. And that's going to list your existing agents, anything that's already been created, the Microsoft provided ones, or anything you've created. And it also gives you the ability to create new ones. So when you create a new one, next slide, you get sort of a light version of an agent creation process. So here I can add custom knowledge sources. Those knowledge sources can be from SharePoint, they can be files, they can be from Teams, but they can also be public-facing websites. So again, this is more information than you could generally do with a SharePoint agent. And from here, you can actually just hit create and be good to go. I created a very quick agent that looked at the Asks in Praxis summaries on our website, and then merged that with what's new at Microsoft and asked what have we done and what should we talk about next. And so you can do this very quickly and deploy this out to you or your organization. You can also go to the Copilot Studio Makers page, which is on the next slide. And you get a lot more abilities to customize.
You have the same slide twice. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
So
I was like, how
here-
come this one looks exactly the same? I'm like, So I'm literally got this and I'm like, are they really the same? What did I miss? Okay, sorry.
I blame
go ahead.
Mark. Mark did it.
Okay, good.
It's all
It
Mark's
could be
fault.
my fault.
Yeah. So here, from the Copilot Studio Makers page, you can actually create a new agent. And when you do that, you end up with this whole toolbar at the top. And each one of these are key components that we can do to customize what the Copilot or what the agent is going to do, how it's going to react, what are the analytics around it, and all that. I think we can actually just go to the next slide. So this is sort of an expansion of what Todd was talking about earlier in what SharePoint Agents doesn't have, is what the is what the Copilot Studio has. So we've got knowledge. This is what data can we reason over. And just out of the box, we can connect to files. So we can do uploaded files, SharePoint related files, Teams files, OneDrive, any sort of file. So you could upload one holiday, a holiday schedule, and you could just use that single document. You can reason over M365 or Azure-based data, so other products like Dynamics or Azure AI Search or Dataverse or Azure SQL. So you can connect to a lot of different data sources. There are a whole bunch of the extra plugins for ServiceNow and Salesforce. And this was an interesting one that I was looking at some of Paolo's demos, Paolo Pialorsi, and he created this like HR bot agent, and then he asked it to how to make pasta carbonara.
That's fantastic.
And there's a setting within Copilot Studio that either asks whether or not you want to use general AI knowledge or not. So it's like, do you want to go out to the broader LLM, or do you just want to focus on the knowledge set that you were looking at? And the answer is, it depends, because if you're doing an HR bot, you don't want somebody to ask it how to make pasta and for it to return an answer. So, all right. The other thing is we have tools. These are what additional skills or data you can use here. This is where you would go in and add in connectors to get SharePoint list data. You can post emails to Teams. You can send an email. You can create a meeting. We also have topics. So this is a way to sort of customize the conversational experience. You can ask the users questions, right? Like, if you want to do some kind of question and answer about, to give the user some more specific information about benefits. Are you an executive? Are you an hourly employee? Are you a salaried employee? You can start to customize the knowledge base that you're actually asking the data from. And we can actually execute tasks based on that input. And lastly, this is the other big thing, is that we have broader channels where we can publish these agents. So if you're doing all sorts of public related information, you can create an agent that you can then surface on your website, for instance, to do help desk or something like that.
Another cool thing is you can publish these to SharePoint and they show up as .agent files and they look and act sort of like the other ones. So if your users are used to that paradigm, they can click that, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I still think that whole file thing has got a governance situation all over it, but let's not go down that.
Yeah.
Are you just saying that because there is
maturity thing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly why I'm saying it.
All right. I think that's the end of my slides, right?
Yeah, I think it is. So I am only going to spend just a hot second on here. One thing I wanted to, even though if you're not a dev, and so this will probably not matter to you right away, but you should know about MCP. So if you hear people talking about MCP and you are not a developer, what it stands for is Model Context Protocol. This is the hot thing right now. The idea behind it is, when we were talking about when Derek was talking about Copilot Studio and the fact that you could give the agent that you were building tools to work with, that idea is that you would say, oh, well, this agent then maybe has the ability to send an email, or it has the ability to look up someone's calendar event, or all of these like things that it can do. What an MCP sort of is, it's the idea that you could have a service that is at an API endpoint that would have a bunch of tools available to it, and you could sort of plug it into your agent. And then as the tools change in that MCP server, you would get more tools in your available to your agent. So your agent would get smarter based on the fact that the MCP would have more tools in it, instead of having to build them yourself and or build them into that specific agent. So it makes your agent able to sort of grow. And Andrew Connell likes to explain this by, Neo didn't know Kung Fu until he plugged into the Matrix. And it's kind of like that. It's a funny way to say it, but the idea that you have all this knowledge or ability or things that you can do, and as soon as you plug your agent into it, they get all of those skills. Not to say you can't build those skills skills separately. So it's an important thing to sort of understand. The pro code story here is that complete customization from end to end. And so we sort of have two models. There's declarative agents, and I'm leaving these slides in so you can go back and look at them. I'm not going to go over them. I'm just going to let them build really quickly because we stole these from the Microsoft deck. These are the when and why to use a declarative agent and why you might want to. So going to that next slide, this is where you can use a declarative agent to give it skills and knowledge where those skills can be custom code. So you could write your own code modules to pin in there to get those actions and capabilities. And plus you can do the instructions and the grounding and all the things you can do with the other. So declarative agents, which are essentially just a bunch of JSON files and then whatever custom code you've written, are fairly easy to put together. They're still take a dev probably, but it's not a lot of coding. It's just a matter of like declaratively connecting everything together. And then the custom engine agents, again, I'm just going to build this slide so you can see all the bullet points for later. You can go back to the video, pause on here and look at them all. Essentially, that's when you want control of the whole thing. You want to, with code, write your own orchestrator. You want to use your some other foundational model that isn't one that Microsoft offers or is a custom one that you've built or one of the small language models, whatever it might be. You get to choose what model that is. You get to choose whether you use an orchestrator that's been built by the community or you write your own orchestrator or whatever you do. You can, the knowledge, the skills, the autonomy, all of that, you get to control all of it. And so that's sort of the full Monty. So the last thing we want to talk about is some cost and licensing thoughts. One of the things we sort of talked about all along, and I saw the question in the chat, but I sort of put it aside because I knew we were going to talk about this. There is now a change where you can buy Copilot licenses per user, or you can do a pay-go model. And so one of the things that, as of at least today, and this may change, but as of today, you can't just purely go to the pay-go model and have the semantic index. You have to have one user license at $30 per user per month before the semantic index gets built in your tenant. I have no idea how you could check if that has been done or not, like if the semantic index exists or not, but I know that if you have one license, you should have it. And then you can turn on pay-go, and then other people can use the agents that you build, and essentially they will have the ability to use Copilot, but you'll be charged in consumption versus being charged on a per user per month. So it's very similar to the Power Platform licensing, where you can pay for a premium planner, Power Automate license, for instance, or you can do a Logic app that's consumption based. So you can do either one, and it's just how you want to pay for it. So that's the pay-go versus user licenses. There is a new cost estimator that came out for Copilot Studio called the Agent Use Estimator. I guess it's in preview. I don't know much about it, but I just saw it the other day and wanted to make sure I shared it. And then those code solutions that I talked about are all costed through Azure. It's your Azure consumption for those. None of the declarative agents or the custom engine agents get charged on that pay-go model or a per user model, basis, but you do again need one Copilot per user license to initiate that semantic index. So it's good to understand all that. All right, we are right at the end of time. Here's our takeaway slide. I'm going to let this sit up here, but essentially what we did is we took the maturity model levels and we said, okay, based on those, what do you get when you're at that maturity model? Where do you find it, and what some governance thoughts are around it? So those are some good things. Again, you can go back and look at this later in the recording. And then we got some resources, the maturity model, obviously getting started with SharePoint agents, the Ask and Praxis that Todd mentioned about the SharePoint agents. And there's a Copilot developer camp that helps you walk through creating declarative agents and custom engine agents and stuff. So that's a great resource if you're a developer and want to get started with that. And with that, our next episode is June 25th. We're going to do a getting started on intranet upgrade discovery with our little PowerShell TM on there, because Derek and I will be out. And so I think Todd is going to be able to do a whole bunch of PowerShell-y things that we might not let him do otherwise. See us live. Derek and I will be at TechCon 365 in Seattle. And then I'll be in Atlanta at TechCon 365 in August. And then, hey, guys, Collab Days New England. If you are a speaker, Call for Speakers closes in 4 more days. If you are a speaker, you want to come speak, please submit your sessions now. If you are a sponsor or the organization you work for wants to be a sponsor, we would love to have you. You can reach out to Derek on that. And with that, everybody, have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us again, and see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask and Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.